All right, what's up, YouTube? It's Nick here. Sorry for the delay. It's been, pretty eventful past few weeks. I've been pretty busy, but hoping to get some videos out pretty soon. So I've had a bunch of discussions in the past few weeks about religion, and so I want to make several videos on kind of common questions that I get from people that I talk to. And so some of these questions include, do you believe in a God, and do you believe that it's some kind of external conscious agent, and it's controlling our decisions and things like that. And then other questions, do you believe that the Bible is real? And kind of my take on, how to interpret the Bible and things like that. And then also, my opinion on, kind of the Catholic Church and kind of the history of, Christianity and kind of some of the atrocities that were done in the name of Christianity and my opinion on those things. So keep an eye out for those videos. They should be hopefully coming out soon, within, the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. And I talked to a few people that agreed to come on the podcast, so that should be starting up soon as well. So stay tuned for that. But in this video today, what I want to talk about is kind of my journey, how I went from atheist and kind of pretty anti-religious to where I am now, where I consider myself kind of overtly religious and, pretty aligned with, let's say, Christianity. And so I think, to start off, I would say growing up, I was part of the Methodist Church until about 13 or so. I wasn't overly religious. My parents weren't overly religious, but, we kind of went to church on Sundays. And then, it just kind of fell off when I was, in my teenage years. And I didn't really pay much mind to it. And then when I was 20 or so, I started college. I took a physics course and really got into that. And then, started watching a bunch of stuff on YouTube and watching, kind of different, atheists talk about, religion and certain, conversations between people like, with Sam Harris and other people, kind of, these, new atheist types. And it seemed like, kind of that there was a, tension between, let's say, science and religion. And, there was a lot of people that were kind of, it seemed like religion was in this camp that they, believed that the Bible was real and that, the earth was only, 6,000 years old or whatever, and that, evolution isn't real and things like that. And then there was science that, kind of had an evidence-based approach. And it seemed like, you kind of were in one camp or the other. And so I was kind of on, team science. And, I had this attitude that was actually pretty anti-religious and kind of thought, people that believe in religion are kind of, let's say archaic and not, in the modern time. And so I kind of had this approach for a while, and I just didn't really think much about religion, to be honest. But kind of when religion did come up in conversation, I kind of had a bit of a negative attitude towards it. And then as my physics career progressed, I started getting involved in research and started doing research projects. And I remember my first project, I was studying what was called quantum entanglement and quantum spin systems. It was a pretty exciting project. I did a lot of programming and did a lot of it was let's say mentally stimulating. And I enjoyed it. And then we went to write up a paper to publish it. And when we did that, you have to kind of build a narrative. You have to tell a story on, why people should care. Because you want to tell a compelling story in some sense to get it published, and have the journal say like, this is a good research project, and this is good results, and this seems like something that we want to have in our journal. And so, we had to come up with the story of, why do we care? And why does anybody care about, this particular topic that we were looking at? And I remember actually thinking that, I actually don't know how to answer this question. I'm not sure why people care. At the time, I was, kind of the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I did this project because my advisor told me, hey, here's a project for you. And I was just kind of, thrilled that I actually got a research project. And I didn't really, think much of it about, why do we care about this, And then I remember kind of asking this question, and then I even talked to my advisor about it, and, we kind of struggled actually to answer that question. And it got me a bit depressed. And then it got me thinking kind of generally actually about this field. Like, why does any of this matter? And I'm not trying to say it doesn't matter, but it's actually not totally obvious, when you're kind of really in the weeds of it and you're studying kind of esoteric, physics research topics. Why does this stuff matter? And I started thinking about that question a lot, and I struggled actually to answer it, and it made me a bit, let's say, I was starting to get a bit depressed with kind of physics research generally, and but my attitude was kind of like, okay, I'm still an undergrad, kind of the more I learn, the more I'll, kind of see the big picture of these things, and, then this feeling will go away. So this was happening in my career, and then in my personal life, I would say I started grappling with nihilism, and so, I think nihilism is actually like it's a pretty common point, and I talked to a bunch of my friends. A bunch of my friends also were kind of, grappling with nihilism, and it kind of seemed like, basically nothing is meaningful, and everything, is kind of pointless, and ultimately, in millions of years, the sun's just going to eat the earth, so kind of who cares? Why do anything? Why don't I just stay home and play video games all day? Like, why should I do anything if ultimately it's all meaningless and none of it matters, and we're just kind of a single person on a blue dot in a endless, outer space. And yeah, and if all you have is science and you don't have some kind of religious framework, it's actually pretty hard to talk yourself out of a position like that. And I kind of wander around in this nihilistic, kind of hell, to be honest, for multiple years. And yeah, and it was it's pretty awful. And yeah, and then at one point I got pretty into, let's say, psychology. Yeah, I had this one relationship, and when we broke up, I was pretty hurt by it, and I kind of was, definitely started having a lot of depression, and then I at some point I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to try to understand myself and work on myself, and try to kind of cure this depression and nihilism and everything that I've been facing. And during that time, I found Jordan Peterson's course. I mean, I've been watching Jordan Peterson kind of on and off for a bit, but I decided to watch his course, Maps of Meaning. And I highly recommend that course. I could put a link to it in the description. And the course, I mean, it's kind of, I would say it's a course. The goal is actually, to describe how to, what gives your life meaning. And he takes let's say, I mean, it's actually quite religious, but it's, the approach that he takes, like, comes from, psychology, which is definitely, kind of the jargon, and the worldview is kind of more aligned with, kind of the scientific worldview. So it seemed more palatable to me than, some priest kind of preaching about the Bible or something like that. And so, I watched that course, and it definitely helped a lot with my nihilism. And then at the same time, I was getting really into psychology. I was getting into Carl Jung and other psychologists like that. And then I remember this one time I was, I was journaling a lot at this time after this breakup. And I remember this one time I was, pretty low and out and pissed off at myself and the world and all this other stuff. And I remember saying to myself once, I hate you. Like, why do you fuck everything up? Something like this. And, it caught my eye because it, like who am I talking to? Right? I said, I hate you. Right? Which was, that was a kind of like a big event, because then I realized, like, I don't think I'm actually just one person. Right? Like, even the framing of that, I hate you, indicates that there's more than one person inside me in some sense, And then I started to become aware of the fact that, I'm actually not fully in control of my actions. And, like, maybe you can relate to this kind of anecdote, and this, this happened to me, like, fairly frequently, where it was kind of like, I would plan this, super productive day. It's like, okay, tomorrow, I'm going to wake up early, and I'm going to, be super productive. I'm going to do a bunch of homework, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to get ahead of my courses, and I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to start cooking myself, really healthy meals and do all this kind of stuff, and then tomorrow comes and I sleep in, and then I just, say fuck it and, smoke weed all day and play video games and don't do any of that. And, maybe you can relate to something like that. And, what's interesting about that, though, is it's, what's going on there? I mean, I had this plan, and then I didn't live up to that plan. Why? Like, why did I not do what I thought I should do, right? And, one way to interpret that is that there's more than one person inside of me, right? And then it was kind of like, okay, well, what is actually dictating the choices that I make, right? And, it was pretty interesting because in some sense I would say, it wasn't me because, I wanted to have this productive day and I didn't do that. So in some sense, I'm not in control of the choices that I make. Well, then what is? Right? And then I started to think, like that's pretty interesting. There's something that's kind of controlling what it is that I do that isn't me. And then it was, it's kind of eye opening, and it was kind of like, okay, well, what is it that controls the decisions that I make? And then I'd say this kind of spawned this, really long therapeutic journey, and then I actually started going to actual therapy, and I found a therapist that's, what's called a psychodynamic therapist, where you kind of, the goal is something like, trying to understand yourself and understand why you make the decisions that you do make, which is kind of just the question that I was kind of looking for an answer for. And then, I went on this journey, and, at the time I still wasn't religious. I was starting to open up a bit more to religion, and when I watched Jordan Peterson's course, he talks about the Bible a lot, and I remember kind of being like, Jesus, man, like, can you not talk about this stuff? And it was almost like, it actually was a bit of a turnoff for me that it kept bringing up, biblical stories, and was talking about Cain and Abel and some of these other things. And I was like, do you need to do that? Can you just, like, kind of drop that shit and just, stay in the realm of science and stuff, And then, but I started warming up to it the more he kept doing it. And then, I started, let's just say, get more, not repulsed by religion. And so then at some point I got pretty interested in what was going on politically. And, I actually wasn't the most interested in kind of getting into the weeds on, whether you're pro or against abortion or something like this, but more like looking at the phenomena of what was going on in our political landscape, right? I mean, we just had what appeared to me to be like an outrageously divided nation, and it was kind of, both sides thought the other one was just, basically full-blown Satan themselves and just, evil and wanted to destroy the country. And, it seemed like, there was just immense tribalism, and it was just surprising to me. I was like, what the hell's going on here? I mean, I had been essentially apolitical, didn't really care about politics at all. And then, I just kind of got blasted in my face at in undergrad, and if you go to any of the UCs, and I'm sure that's probably true at any university, I mean, like, you can't help but, encounter political discussions constantly, and they got really tense, and it was really emotional. And then, I started watching the news more and started watching other people online, and kind of realized that, we're in the middle of this culture war that just seemed, just like incredibly divided. And I remember at the 2020 election, just actually leading up to the election, it was like, I swear it was like the country's in like mass psychosis. We're on the verge of like a full-blown war. And it was like, people on the right were forming militias and were, trying to fight the, evil Antifa people, and the Antifa people were forming militias, and it was just like, what the hell is going on, or like our society is just totally wonky, And then I started thinking, okay, what's kind of controlling these, what's guiding these, kind of movements, and why are they doing this, And then, so this is kind of related back to the question of science, and then also kind of this personal journey I had with therapy. It's kind of just asking the question of why are we doing what we're doing, and kind of where are we headed? Like, what's the goal of the decisions we're making, and like both as a society and as an individual. And like it's actually it's a pretty tricky question to answer that. And But what I kind of realized though is that, at least in my personal life, is, it was like the choices I make aren't entirely my own. So there's something else that's controlling me. And then, I mean, this started to remind me a lot of just, religious language. And I remember, or religious ideas, and I remember one time I was, kind of, upset with myself. Like, let's say on one of these days where I wanted to be super productive and then I wasn't. And then I remember even thinking to myself, it's like, I feel like I'm almost like possessed by a demon, And it was like, I remember having that thought and be like, oh, that was kind of strange that I use that language, but it seemed fitting, And then, so I was kind of, had this experience where I was like, okay, I'm not really controlling what I'm not fully in control of my own decisions, And then it was kind of like, okay, well, what is in control of me? And I think this is, in some sense, it was almost like, not almost by definition, like phenomenologically, I should just call that God. Whatever it is that's kind of in control of me, I should call that God. And it was kind of, just, it woke me up a bit to, like, let's say this religious jargon, And then, but then I was thinking on a collective level, I remember noticing, I'd go on campus and there'd be these rallies, like just people banging drums and pissed off about God knows what. And then, if you talk to them and you ask them, like, hey, what's up? Like, what's going on? It was almost like they actually couldn't even fully articulate what it is that they were so upset about, but, they were pissed off. And it was a strange experience, and then there's a lot of videos on YouTube, you look at these, let's say a centrist type, or maybe even someone that's right-wing goes around and, looks at one of these activist rallies, and then they interview people, and then, find someone that, can't even articulate at all why they're doing what they're doing, and then it'd be like, oh, like, the title of the video would be like, oh, this guy owns some libtards, or something like this, and it was kind of, like, I don't want to get too much into the politics, but it was kind of an interesting thing to think about, like, okay, why is it that people are being kind of swept up by these movements? And it's on both sides, it's lefty and right. I mean, you see the same thing with, the Proud Boys and stuff like that, And it was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? Like, why are people getting so swept up into this? And then there was, I forget who it is, some philosopher once said something like, like, people don't have ideas have people. And, that idea really kind of stuck with me. It was like, okay, what's going on here? It's like, somehow people are kind of, something is possessing them, and it's almost like, something is acting through them. And I remember just thinking that was really strange. Like, what's going on here? It's almost like there's like a spirit that was, getting into these people and kind of, controlling them. And then it was like, okay, that's an interesting phenomena. And kind of the way I want to describe that is with religious language. Say that it was, the spirit of some kind of, like God or something that was kind of controlling these people, And that kind of, I started thinking, like, okay, I mean, maybe this religion thing is onto something. And then, yeah, and so I started thinking about this, and then I started asking the question, kind of like, okay, if there is something that's beyond us, that's controlling us, can we maybe actually have some control over, kind of what it is that's guiding us, And can we kind of form a relationship with that which guides us? And, at that point, it was kind of like, okay, maybe what you need to protect yourself against, saying, quote unquote, being possessed by, something that, is actually going to end up being harmful and dangerous. It was kind of like, okay, well, what I need to do kind of is form a relationship with, in some sense, like a higher power, And it was kind of, at that point, it was kind of like, okay, I mean, what I'm describing is basically just religion. And, so I think that's, at that point, it was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of, faced with this, that I was like, okay, I'm kind of basically coming up on that I what I'm experiencing is full-blown religious, and maybe it was kind of like, okay, maybe there's actually something to this. And, it just seemed like religion kind of actually answered a bunch of questions that I had. You know, I was kind of nihilistic and nothing was meaningful. And, you know, this religious framework like automatically gives your life meaning. And then I was experiencing these things that I wasn't in control. Something else was in control of me. It was kind of like, okay, well, that's, you know, I mean, for lack of a better word, like I don't have a better word to describe that than, you know, that was, you know, an encounter with a god. You know, maybe it's not the god, but it's some kind of, you know, entity that's beyond me that I'm not fully identifying with, that's controlling and guiding my actions. You know, and then I saw this kind of playing out on a large scale. And then it seemed like, you know, what we needed was something like I saw our political landscape and I saw that we were super divided. And I just remember thinking, you know, this is strange. And then it was kind of like there's almost, you know, two different gods battling it out. Like that's like almost I think the appropriate way to view this, you know. And then in the next video, I'll describe more what I mean by God. But you know, then it got me thinking. You know, like it feels like in our nation right now we're very divided, and there's not like kind of a overarching theme or, you know, set of values that unifies us, right? And it's kind of, it's very tribal, and there's like, you know, there's our camp and the other side's evil, you know, and it's, you're kind of in either one of these two camps, and then, you know, like each camp thinks the other camp is just trying to destroy the country and is awful, you know. And it was kind of like, okay, you know, this is really strange. You know, we kind of need something that brings us together as a country and as a nation, and kind of unifies us, and, you know, doesn't view, you know, people that are on the other side as, you know, somehow basically satanic and evil, and that they're actually, you know, humans that ultimately want more or less the same things that anybody else wants, but, you know, they have a slightly different, you know, idea of how we would, you know, go about getting that. And yeah, and then you know, if you look at the word religion, you know, like its root, it comes from the word, the Latin words religare and religio. And religare, the word is, you know, to bind together. And then religio is something like, you know, to have reverence for, you know. So then religion is something like, you know, it's a framework that binds us together in reverence for some higher power that transcends us, right? And it's something like that. And it was kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm on board with this. It seems like that's kind of actually exactly what we need, is something that, you know, achieves that, because it seems like, you know, our nation is just incredibly divided. And so I'd say, you know, this is actually kind of the goal of this channel, actually, is, you know, like, that's what I want. I'm hoping this unity movement is it's like, let's start to have a discussion about how it is that we can actually find something that binds us together, and whether it's Christianity or it's something else or whatever, like that's not the most important part to me, but it's kind of, you know, I feel like we need some kind of framework, and we need some kind of, you know, set of values that actually, you know, bind us together as you know, a nation, and it isn't just, you know, just full of hate and, you know, disgust for the other side and stuff, and something that actually brings us all together and says, you know, okay, we have disagreements, but ultimately we're all kind of, you know, of the same kind, and we're all, you know, bound together under some, you know, guiding principle or something. And it was kind of like, okay, well, I mean, that's just religion. That's the definition of religion in some sense, you know. And so, yeah, so, you know, hopefully this helps you understand a bit of, you know, kind of my journey, how I got to where I am. Yeah, and so, you know, if this content interests you, make sure, you know, you smash the like button and subscribe, and stay tuned for future videos. All right, take care.